Welcome, zombie fans, to this week's episode of Reanimated. We are in episode 99, just one episode away from 100. Stuart, you are here. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe that I'm here.
Yeah, me neither. It's that kind of a day. This just should mention before we get rolling that this episode, like all our episodes, are brought to you by our good friends at Squarespace. Squarespace, build it beautiful. You can customize your own website, and it looks great or bad, as Stuart has pointed out, as bad as you want it to look. If you're a first-time user, they've given us an offer code, which is ZOMBIE. It's not case sensitive. Throw that in there, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. So thanks, Squarespace. We appreciate your support, as always. So today, we're going to be talking about the next couple episodes in Season 4, Claimed and Still. But before we get to that, we have a couple of news items. Do you want to start in on this? I had a couple of choice words about the first item on our list.
Yeah, and another in our extended series on Has the Zombie Thing Gone Too Far? When you've got a video feature on the Wall Street Journal's website, maybe again, that's the reality of the situation, knocking on the window in the middle of the night.
I don't even think in the middle of the night.
All right, in broad daylight. So Wall Street Journal posted a video, what to pack for the zombie apocalypse. And it's essentially just go bag, but they make a couple of snarky comments like, this is for the zombie apocalypse. But really, it's just a go bag.
Yep.
And so the reporter in this article just kind of seems very likely that it's in her own apartment and that's her bag. Although I think some of the items in the bag that she is highlighting are like placeholders or not the real thing, because who has that little duct tape ever?
Yeah.
But yeah, so she goes through her bag and pulls everything out and just says a little something about each thing, but not in too much detail. And take it away, HJ, with your criticism of that.
Well, first of all, like a couple of the things that you mentioned, as you said, like duct tape. Okay. Like if you're gonna do it right, right? Like have that as a main staple of your go bag. But
they sell much larger rolls of duct tape.
Yeah, like why have the tiny little roll? Like that's not going to be useful at all. But the thing that I mainly noticed is like she's like, oh yeah, I have medication and toiletries. Well, you're going to need a lot more than one little travel size pack of Tylenol. Just saying, if you are going to have a go bag, make it actually useful. And I mean, I get the point. I get that they're just trying to make it seem easy for people. But the truth is, you should really think about what you might actually need. And you also have to pay attention to how heavy the thing is. And it's really great to be carrying a thermos, except what are you going to put in that thermos other than, like water purification, something or other might be helpful.
Or the booze that she has in her bag.
The booze is good. The booze makes sense, but that's also pretty heavy to be carrying around. So anyway, I mean, put whatever you want in your go bag. This just doesn't seem to be extraordinarily well thought out to me. But
also, the utility knife is the smallest. It's like the size of a pinky. Prefer a little more meat to my weapons.
Yeah, there's many different examples of multi-tools. That is not the one that I would pick. So. But that, again, this is, I'm also not surprised because this is what you can probably expect, just from like an urban person, maybe. I don't know. It just seems, and I also like her string that she has to tie up her tarp also doesn't seem to be extraordinarily useful because there's really not that much of it. So if you're going to be using that to like sort of rig a tarp up, you probably need more than that. So,
yeah,
just saying.
And the my half of the Reanimated podcast always endorses 550 cord or paracord for our string needs, ladies and gentlemen.
And it's lighter.
Tensile strength of 550 pounds, and it is very light, and it's fantastic. And you can buy it pretty much anywhere on the internet.
Right, and the cord that she has looks like, where would you even buy cord like that? It doesn't even look...
Yeah, that's from somebody's backyard in the 1950s.
Right? Totally. So anyway, those were my thoughts about my critique of that go bag. But I do think that it's one of those things, as you said, I think they're using it as a way to keep people aware, but these things are only useful if there's thought put into them. It doesn't do you any good to have a sort of poorly put together go bag. And then next up was a very long article, which I have not finished reading, but the beginning of it looks amazing. And it's
Yeah.
why don't you go into it since you actually read it?
Wait till you get to the end and you realize it was all written by a lawyer, which
Of
I was
course.
like, huh, what? But okay, it doesn't have anything to do with law or legal anything while you're reading it. It's just at the end you're like, oh wow, this guy may be overqualified to be writing about pop culture. However, it's a very highbrow approach and look at The Walking Dead and answering that question that we're always asking ourselves, like why are zombies so in right now, and what is The Walking Dead doing to perpetuate some of the reasons that culturally we're very interested in this topic. And some of the most salient points in this piece for me are comparing, and so this is spanning more than further ahead than Reanimated has gotten in our review of The Walking Dead, so bear with us. But comparing Alexandrians and Rick's group to Athenians and Spartans, respectively. One is a culture based on like democracy and happiness, and the other is based on warfare and practical, or a more pragmatic approach, and basically a lack of happiness. The author goes into the fact that the show seems to paints any attempt to get above like the basic stage of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, although he doesn't talk about Maslow in the article, but it's essentially that's what he's talking about. Once you get past survival, this show basically beats you back down to that level because there's no character who can get above the basic element of the hierarchy of needs. There's no like higher reason, there's no farming, there's no attempt to be happy beyond survival that is rewarded. And so I felt like it's a long article. It makes other comparisons to things like Heart of Darkness, and comparing The Walking Dead to a Western with a very pessimistic, what he refers to as a new Dark Age or a Bronze Age, where it's just all fire and brimstone. HA, do you have any other thoughts about it?
I do think that it's a well thought out and thus far well written article in terms of laying out exactly why some of these things are so salient right now. There is an inevitability to like zombie films and zombie shows, and especially The Walking Dead. There's a reason why The Walking Dead feels or touches whatever that is off in the human brain, I think. One thing I was thinking of recently is that I don't know if you saw the most recent article just about global warming and the fact that they think that perhaps they underestimated where the water levels might go in the next couple of decades. And I think people have a lot of fear but feel powerless about it. And that's sort of what this show is tapping into. And the idea that there might be something like that in the future, and it's something that makes it easier to deal with the powerlessness of the situation, I guess, or to think about those things. But we can talk when Park Slope is underwater, I guess. Late to see if all this stuff holds true.
Yeah, you and I are both in the firing line. If anything gets above like, I don't know, 25, 30 feet.
Yeah. I think that these are all things that are part of the zeitgeist right now, and just the way the world works. I think there's a lot going on right now that this is, and there's a reason why it remains still popular, and it's now on Wall Street Journal and all that kind of thing. And there was an article that I chose not to put up here, but it was with this mother that basically says that Walking Dead is the new Family Ties. I don't know if you saw that running around. Basically just saying that this is a way of like families to bond over a television show, and it doesn't really, not taking into account the bloodshed and all that, but it's something that the families bond over, and there's actually a lot of families that I guess enjoy watching this and discussing it and all that kind of thing.
Can't say that's the case with my family, whether either
Nor
my,
mine, nor
my
mine.
nuclear family nor my extended family.
It's interesting because she's saying that like one of her kids does not can't watch people throw up, but has no problem with The Walking Dead. So, like in shows.
We'll have links to both of these, and
Yep.
perhaps the family ties also all in the show notes.
So, are you ready to talk about these next two episodes?
Indeed, you do. What numbers are they?
They are episodes 11 and 12, I think.
I think you're right. The Claimers have a special place in my heart, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I just feel like it's well, during this episode, I also kind of decided that I didn't really believe that they were a functional group that could exist mostly because of the fighting over the bed.
Yeah, that too.
So
But
this was directed by, I'm not sure how you say this name, Seth Mann, written by Nicole Beatty and Seth Hoffman, and played to an audience of 13.12 million.
this is I liked parts of this episode. You know, this episode kind of plays into the Michonne and Carl interaction, which we've seen before when remember when they went and Carl wanted to get the picture of his parents because he wanted to have a picture of his mom for Judith, and when these two sort of go off on their own in the wild, you get interesting reveals about Michonne.
Yeah.
And this one especially, I mean, they hinted at it in her kind of bizarro dream sequence, but basically, Carl and Michonne in this episode have gone off foraging, and they've left Rick to recuperate. And, you know, I like how Rick trusts Michonne enough to let her run off with Carl, even though it's just the three of them at this point. So that's kind of an interesting thing where he's, you know, he does put up a little bit of a fight, but he then listens to her. Not that her recommendation does him any good in the long run in this episode, but Michonne and Carl are walking along, and as they're foraging, she finally reveals to Carl that she had a kid. And Carl seems extraordinarily shocked at this news.
It's a weird episode because Carl goes from being weird and sullen to being super engaged in Michonne. I guess that's you know, she failed with the crazy cheese, and so
Right.
she's going with just truth bombs, and that works. So I guess we should just take it. But
Well, some of it, I think some of this also starts out, I should backtrack a little bit. The opener of this episode is Carl and Michonne having breakfast, and then Carl inadvertently remembers Judith, and that Judith's gone, and he's really upset about it. And I think some of the reason why Michonne is bringing up these truth bombs is because she recognizes that he's mourning Judith, and that brings back her own feelings about her kid. And I think she's basically trying to help him.
these are a couple of therapy episodes,
Right.
really.
Yeah,
When it
both
comes
of
right
these
down
are.
to it. Yeah, I think
Both of these are.
it's hella therapy.
Right.
Yeah, but it works, you know. Like she, like I said, strikes out with the crazy cheese, switches gears. And,
Crazy
and then-
cheese is really odd, but
Yeah, she
okay.
pretends to be a zombie. It was very strange. But hey, you know, as she said, she can make a 3-year-old laugh, but no, maybe not. Is he supposed to be a teenager at this point, or do you think he's
Carl?
still like a tween?
Carl, I mean, maybe he is, but he looks like a teenager to me.
Yeah. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and make a bold statement that I think this show and Chandler, what's his name? I forget his last name.
Is it
But
Riggs?
Carl.
No.
Chandler Riggs could
Is
be
it?
something like that.
Oh,
Could be.
God. I just
He-
think of him as Carl.
He's a good child. He's a good child actor. That's not like you know, crazy thing to say, but most TV shows cannot do good teenage characters because they're so damn annoying. And while Carl definitely has his moments, he's like he's growing into throughout the course of this show and definitely in this season, like a capable and good teenage character.
Right.
Teenage character who's fun to watch.
Yeah, he's definitely, and you see a lot more of that in this episode, just him growing up a lot. And I agree with you. He has less annoying moments in this season than he has in previous seasons. So,
As long as he's in the house, everything's fine.
yes, he's in the house, and it is Chandler Riggs. But yeah, and I do like the interaction between these two, and I like the fact that I like when Michonne shows more of her character as opposed to just the person with a katana.
Right.
which is kind of nice.
Well,
So that's
because her character is such a juxtaposition of, as we saw in her flashback, this social person, this cultured person, and then the death machine.
which it's always an interesting thing. Why do certain people survive in this world? And they really do, like, they come from some very, very different backgrounds. Daryl put in side by side with Michonne, you would never have expected Michonne to have got to this point, if you just knew what her background was, without knowing anything else. Daryl makes a little bit more sense just because of how he was basically trained from the get-go to survive and to not really depend on anybody. But she's a little bit more surprising. So we've got the Michonne and the Carl thing going on, and then in the meantime we've got this whole weird thing that happens at the house with Rick. Which, when I as I was watching this, I was remembering the first time I saw this, I thought maybe he was hallucinating.
Yeah, I think they want us maybe to think that.
Like, you think, oh, is he going crazy again? And they have the little crazy-eyed Rick action going on, but no, it's just these guys trying to, like, break into the house. And I think you're right. I think they overplay their hand in the dynamic with these characters. You just don't buy the fact, or at least I don't buy the fact, that any of these guys would have made it to this point, because they're too weird with each other.
If they actually choke each other out over sleeping in a bed, it doesn't seem like they would have killed each other by now.
Right. I also, one thing that bugged me the last time as well as this time, so Rick's kind of like trying to take a cozy nap in his bed, and then he hears these people in the house, and he hides under the bed, which for one thing sounds like, to me it was like, okay, that's an interesting decision. I would have probably gone out on the roof or tried to do something like that as opposed to hide under the bed. That bed is pretty high up off the ground. Somebody walking into that room is going to see some dude under that bed, right?
Well, there were clothes on the floor in front of it.
Maybe, I don't know. It just still felt weird to me. Like, you're going to know, especially when you're hyper aware in this kind of world, because you're always looking for something that's going to kill you, right? So you're not, I mean, monster of the bed could be a literal thing here. And I just think that it seems weird to me that he would have gone unnoticed, but okay. It's almost like a totally bizarro Goldilocks situation. Because, sorry.
No, yeah, you get it.
But anyway, yeah.
It's messed up because he just given his gun to Carl, because Carl used all of his bullets, as we were talking about I think 1 or 2 episodes ago. So he doesn't have a gun. Like, for the first time ever, Rick has 0 weapons. He doesn't even have a knife. What? But yeah, and the way he gets out of this and the way that they shoot this, I think, is really good. There weren't a lot of takes. I feel like they have him moving back and forth around the top floor of this house with other people moving around in a way that makes you feel like on the edge of your seat. Like it was
very
well
video game like. It almost felt like he had to, like, make it through these different levels in order to escape. It was kind of cool.
Definitely had to find cover, and he had to keep displacing and moving around. Yeah, and he shows off his skill of being able to walk backwards through a room without knocking anything over at one point. When he's backed straight into a room, never even looks around, and finds his way to a hiding place, which is pretty impressive.
It is impressive.
And it's a little, they break the suspension of disbelief for me a little bit when the guy he kills in the bathroom turns just at the right moment.
Yeah.
To save everybody. But
well, the other thing is, did you notice in the bathroom they're like fighting and they knock everything over, and then suddenly they're fighting again? Like, it's a total mess up, but like all the stuff is still there.
No,
that they had like knocked over. Like, it's just sort of like, okay, guys, you need to play this right. But anyway, yeah, you're right. The turning was a little bit too fortuitous.
Yeah. That guy just went into the bathroom to read, I think. It was weird. Took his shoes off. Had a good time. Until he was dead. So we meet the claimers, although we don't really know. All we know is that one of them says this bed's claimed, and the other guy says I didn't hear you say it, and then they fight. There's a lot of talking. We don't know how many of them there are. It's a good scene from that perspective. We only see one or two of their faces, but we
Right.
get the impression that there's a few more of them in the house. It's cool. It's well done.
It is cool. It's well done. Not as well done, or the part of this particular episode that I was not so jazzed about was the whole the Glenn
Yeah,
and that whole crew. I don't know. What were your thoughts about that segment of this episode?
it's another kind of weird interaction. Glenn wakes up and is, because he's like this single-minded find Maggie machine, and so waking up in a truck that's moving, and he finds out they've been driving for at least 3 hours. And his reaction is, "I'm going to get off this truck and just walk all the way back," which would take so
I
long.
know.
But then that leads us to another scene of how stupid it is to shoot a rifle on fully auto.
Yeah. Again, although at least in this case they show the repercussions.
Because he's firing from the hip and has no
Right.
idea. Yeah, but still, it's still so
Right,
dumb.
but the whole Abraham dynamic, I feel, I mean, and I know it's deliberately over the top, but you have the whole Abraham like killing the walkers and really kind of enjoying killing them, which is weird. And then you have the introduction of Eugene and the whole sort of mystery around what has actually caused this. And it just seems this all seems, I don't blame Glenn for kind of being skeptical about this whole story because it does seem very far-fetched.
I mean, skeptical or not, he's not going to stick around even
No.
if it's true.
True, but I don't know that these are necessarily trustworthy folks. And then they just really seem all a mishmash and not really having anything together, which is, this whole thing felt very artificial and odd to me,
It's it, it's
right?
definitely it's very strange how hard Abraham is trying to get Glenn to come with him.
Yeah, like why would he care? It just seems just bizarre to me. So, I mean,
Yeah,
I understand that he's like wants him for protection and that kind of thing, but they seem to have been doing okay. And
they've made it that far. I mean, I guess when we later on we find out that they used to have more people and they just keep
yeah,
losing people.
but at
And
this
so
point,
he's
you don't get it, and
yeah.
Eugene just seems like a mess. So I
The
don't know.
dynamic between him and Abraham is very different than it is now.
Yes.
He talks down to Abraham. He says, "I'm smarter than you," and Abraham just goes with it. It's kind of insane.
Yep. And then Tara, you're still like, she's gone from being totally scared of like shooting to zombies to almost shooting like it. Like she's just kind of weird now. But we see her evolution, I think, eventually. But this is sort of the beginning of it.
Most of this episode, she's walking around with a K-bar knife or
Yeah.
some giant knife. Just that's her thing. She's just holding a knife in her hand the whole time.
Yep. So this wasn't quite as satisfying. Um, and then we have the whole end scene where Rick finally just sort of leaves. He set up like the perfect trap for these crazy people, and gets out of the house just in time to warn Michonne and Carl, which was kind of cool. The timing of this was
It's just a
done
little
very
too good.
was interesting. So
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, pretty much just as everything's coming to a head, they stroll up. So
yeah. We have no idea how much time it was exactly because there is definitely a cut between him getting out of the bathroom window and ending up down on the floor or on the ground by the front porch. But they left the Michonne and Carl go on their run at 8:30 in the morning, and they're supposed to come back at 12. So it's less than, and Rick's had time to like go take a nap and read a book.
yep.
It's like an hour tops that the zombie had to turn or the dead guy had to turn, and we know that it can take up to what, like 12 hours or at least 6 or 8. So
It varies
I know I know it does, and
depending on the plot of the show.
yeah, exactly. It depends on how useful the turning can be. It's just I don't know. I'd like a little more slop in my timeline for stuff like this.
Agreed.
Overall,
But
though, that's a pretty small point. So overall, I thought this was a good episode, and I really liked the Rick stuff in the house, and the Carl and Michonne conversation was awesome.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And it just showed some character development along the way. And at least it, you know, moves the Glenn thing along. You know what his motivation is? He's going to go get his wife. So there you go. Oh, and then, of course, the hint at the end where Rick and Michonne and Carl see the sanctuary sign.
Yep. So now they're on the path to Terminus. I think who else is already on the path to Terminus? Was it
It was
it's
Carol's
Yep.
group.
Carol's group is did Bob and Sasha see a sign yet?
I don't remember.
Either way. So we've got a few members of the cast are all heading in the same direction now. So I think the writing's on the wall, so to speak, that they're all going to get there.
Yep. And then, let's see. And then, are you ready to go into the next episode?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is another really tight little cast. I mean, that one was just some claimers got to show up, but just mostly just Rick and Carl and Michonne, and then a whole bunch of other people.
Yep.
For a couple scenes. But this one is tight.
Yep. This one is just Daryl and Beth. This is the Daryl and Beth show.
Like the ultimate odd couple of characters.
Yeah, and this one is called Still, by the way. Written by Angela Kane and directed by Julius Ramsey.
His directorial debut.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it got an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes and an audience of 12.6 million.
Now I'll admit to you, I love Daryl as a character, and I liked some of the things that happened in this episode and some of the reveals, but the things that happened with Beth in this episode, I did not enjoy, and I found tedious watching it a second time, as I did the first time.
Her quest?
Yes, I found her quest to be probably just so annoying, and really just everything about it and every turn was about this little quest. And
I mean, they need something to drive them along, I guess. But the fact that she just wants to get booze and get drunk flies in the face of the plot, the character development at the end of the episode.
Right. I guess it just felt like beating a dead horse with her quest the whole time, and I felt like they used it too much, and they could have transitioned on from that at an earlier point and still gotten to the same place.
Yeah, probably.
So that bothered me a bit, but let's launch into this episode.
Cold open, probably one of the strongest for... Yeah, a hell of a good cold open.
It was awesome.
Beth and Daryl in the trunk of a car all night and into the day, and like through a zombie horde and like a big old storm. It's fantastic. It's just a really good cold open, and then it kind of just continues along into the beginning of the episode too.
Yeah, and I thought that the shots that they used were very cool, especially how they revealed what was going on. Very well done.
It's one of those scenes where I kind of wish we had smell-o-vision, because I bet it stank in the trunk of that
it
car.
probably smelled disgusting.
I would have been so claustrophobic.
Yeah.
But yeah, very cool. And there's actually no dialogue for the first, I don't know how many minutes, like 10 maybe.
Nope.
And those are always fun parts of the show when they do stuff without talking, because it speaks to how well these people have been operating together for quite a while now. But as the episode goes on, we figure out that Beth and Daryl actually don't really know each other at all, don't really respect each other necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know about respect. I mean, I definitely think there is some judgment on both sides. But I think Beth understands that Daryl's the survivor.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. There is definitely some backhanded comments, especially when they get drinking together. But that leads me to the whole purpose of Beth's quest. So she kind of unleashes this thought to Daryl that like she really wants to drink because her dad never let her, and that she wants to find booze somewhere. And so that leads us on this like crazy adventure which to me just seems totally weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's
I
there's
I
a
I,
there's a
I,
sub.
I believe other motivations and sort of weird motivations other than this, but this is just sort of a stupid thing. But go ahead. Subplot.
So there seems to be a thread of Romero in this episode for sure in terms of well, they get to this golf club,
Oh yeah,
country
definitely.
club,
There was
and
so much Romero all over this.
there's a lot of class warfare Romero stuff going on here for sure, right?
Hmm.
With Daryl and Beth coming from fairly humble origins, Daryl more so, and there's like it's one thing that's kind of unrealistic about this is do you really think that a bunch of rich people would try to hole up at a golf country club in a zombie apocalypse?
I don't know about try to, but I think yeah, perhaps because it's a place with supplies. I don't know if I buy that they'd be all dressed up in their whatever, and some of the things that they kind of lay out here. There is so Beth and Daryl break into this country club, and they see, it's a tableau much like we've seen in previous episodes, where you're kind of piecing together what happened based upon the things around, and it's people have definitely set up camp there, but there's like random bags full of money.
Yeah.
Which I guess if they ran to this, and then it's kind of weird because Daryl starts to like pick up the money and all this stuff, and Beth's like, "Why are you even doing this? That's crazy,"
It
Like
doesn't make sense that he would do that.
I don't buy that he would do that, and it's sort of strange. And so we see like there's hanging zombie or walkers. People definitely have died here.
There's lots of people here. That's kind of my first reaction is holy shit, there's like 40 or 50, I don't even know how many bodies they see.
Yeah.
People have been living there and dying there, and lots
Yeah,
of
but yet tables are still set up. It just doesn't. There's things that don't totally make sense to me here. Like it would make sense if maybe the club had been overrun and this stuff was just all set up, but it doesn't make sense if it had been set up as a survivor camp, which is what it looks like.
yeah, it does look like that.
But there's sort of mixed things going on, mixed messages, so to speak.
It's not clear how all the dead people in the first room they go into have died
No.
because they're not all zombies, there's just a lot of bodies.
Yep.
But and then it turns out there's a bunch of zombies in there too. This like building is huge. It takes them really kind of a long time and a lot of twists and turns to clear or get through the whole club.
Right.
And it turns out there are quite a few Zeds in there. There's a really terrifying scene with a grandfather clock.
Yeah.
Those things are
That is a
terrible.
cool thought, though. It's like because it was sort of set up in a good way, where Daryl writes the clock and it starts ticking again,
Yeah.
and then you realize later on the reason why it had been that way. That was kind of cool.
Or at least what it wasn't doing while it was over
Right.
diagonally. One thing that happened in this episode, one other thing that seemed very parallel with the previous one. In the last episode, Michonne like changes her shirt or does some laundry and puts on
Yeah.
a big white shirt and looks like a pirate.
Yeah.
And then in this one, Beth changes. I forget what she was even wearing before, but you know
She's
how
just
all their
wearing like
clothes
a
are
dirty
brown.
tank top.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, you pick the whitest, brightest
Yeah.
things.
She
You're
puts
not
on
dumb.
super bright white and yellow uh, sweater polo combination. I'm like, okay, so why are the women in these two episodes putting aside camouflage in favor of I don't know
Right.
anything?
Because everything else aside, you know that this is going to get dirty. You know it. It's not. There isn't a question about that. But also, you are now just so much more noticeable out in the open. Just really troubling to me.
Although
I mean,
her outfit doesn't last long.
it doesn't. But then she's still in sort of the yellow thing
Hmm.
for the rest of the episode, which again another weird little blooper. It's like her clothing gets ruined in a way that doesn't make sense. Like once she takes the white sweater off.
The
Like,
fact that there's so much more blood underneath
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really odd. But yeah, you're correct. Fashion choices, the women in these two episodes, really poor,
Yeah.
not practical. I do like, in Beth's quest for booze, there's definitely these moments throughout the episode where she's evolving. Like Beth does know how to take care of herself, but Daryl doesn't completely buy it, although he does stand back and he just lets her do it when she continues to insist that she can. So there's this one point within this country club where she gets attacked by a walker, and unfortunately she has to break the bottle of booze she found over his head, and she takes it out, and she kind of looks at Daryl when he finds her like, why didn't you help? And he's like, oh, you said you could take care of yourself, and you did. And it's sort of like, well, yeah, that's how it goes. I don't know. It just was like an odd interaction.
Yeah, definitely. He must have either had a lot of faith in her ability, or he was willing to let her just get killed at that point and be like, all right, she couldn't take care of herself. She was wrong.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think he still would have come through, but, so that's just sort of a continuing like dialogue between them during this episode, is that he doesn't believe that she's totally, he thinks she's a liability. And I definitely think there's a bit of him not wanting to get close enough to her, and he doesn't fully understand how he got saddled with her. But, I do agree with his decision to destroy her peach schnapps, which even
ain't gonna have your first drink be no peach schnapps.
Well, it's just funny because this entire bar is dry except for this bottle of peach schnapps because nobody went for it.
I would like to just speak up in support of peach schnapps real quick. It's pretty good with orange juice. You guys check it out.
Yeah, maybe as a mixer, but not straight.
No, you don't. I mean, hell, if it's cold enough.
Oh.
Not this peach schnapps, but I mean the weather. I will drink any schnapps because that stuff will warm you up on the inside.
All right, you and I will have to agree to disagree on this point. This is also. Do you remember in 28 Days Later when they go up into the apartment building, and all they have is like mint schnapps or creme de menthe or something?
Creme de menthe, gross.
And
all right,
it's
that
just,
one I will.
and
Yeah.
it's sort of like they're like sitting there and it's all being served up to them, and it's like, ugh. So I don't know. That's what it made me think of. But then Daryl takes Beth off to get some real booze, which is moonshine, which I don't know that I would take that as my first drink either.
I mean, if it's good, moonshine is awesome. I had some fantastic moonshine in West Virginia. So they find a. What's cool about this is that he basically knows where he is somehow. Like they go to this shack in the woods. He's like, I've been here with Michonne. So he kind of knows where he is, which is insane. But then we learn a lot about Daryl this episode. And one of those things is he's never been out of Georgia. So maybe he knows everything and everywhere.
He might know everything about Georgia.
And they pull out a whole crate of shine, probably a few gallons of moonshine. It's enough to kill both of them, I imagine.
Yep. Good disinfectant, though.
That too, yeah. They probably should have kept some of it, but oh well. They Beth gets him to play Never Have I Ever. And can I just tell you the things we've learned about him through this show? Because I wrote it down. He has shot a crossbow. He has, as I said, never been out of Georgia. He did do something he regretted while drunk.
He's never been on vacation.
Never been on vacation. He was not a prison guard. He dislikes drinking games. He's never eaten frozen yogurt, never had a pet pony, never got nothing from Santa Claus, or relied on anyone for protection or anyone for anything. He never sang in front of people like everything was perfect, and he never slit his wrists.
These are all true things about Daryl.
You might tell from that list that things started to go downhill with his conversation with Beth at that point.
Signs that your drinking game is going south. I also think when somebody gets up to urinate on the wall, that's also a good sign.
In the middle of the Never Have I Ever. Usually not a good sign, yeah. He also admits later in the episode that he's an asshole when he drinks. Yeah,
clearly. And he and Beth have this whole thing, and it's a rough go of it, where he drags her out of the house to try to teach her how to use a crossbow. It's a pretty awkward scene.
He's got his arm around her neck, like in a chokehold most of that time.
But notice not around her boobs, which is why I think he chose that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Because otherwise it gets a little bit more sexualized, I think, than Daryl is
Either
looking.
way, he's manhandling her,
He
and
is manhandling her.
she doesn't probably want to be manhandled, mostly because he's yelling and they're outside and it's a zombie forest.
And they've been drinking moonshine, which is not very. These are all not good combinations of things.
Honestly, just the whole drinking thing, and to rehash this, he says at the beginning of this scene in the moonshine hut, he's like, just make sure you drink a lot of water, which is something I have to assume they don't have a lot of.
Right.
It's such a bad idea. Like
This is a totally bad idea.
they're gonna get dehydrated, or before he decides to drink too, he's like, oh, it'll be fine. You just drink a lot of water. Like, no, nobody should be drinking booze. It's just gonna impair your everything, judgment, your physical condition.
Yeah, you know what? And every time we've seen people drinking booze in the zombie apocalypse, nothing good ever happens.
Look what
Andrea with the governor.
Yeah, look what he did to Bob when
Bob.
he actually almost starts the lambada with Beth outside the shack in this episode too. Yeah, but then eventually he breaks down and reveals that he feels responsible for the fall of the prison because he stopped looking for the governor, and Beth gives him a
And
big
responsible for Herschel's death,
spoon. Right.
which is, you know,
Yeah.
something that weighs heavily on all of us, I know.
Yeah, it's rough, but and he also then says after the fight, and they've gone back to drinking on the porch, that his lifestyle before the zombie apocalypse, he never had a profession. He was just Merle's sidekick, and they just rode around. I don't even know what, drinking with meth heads.
That's true. One little tidbit about this: did you catch the whole Jesse Pinkman reference?
Oh, what? Because he was a tweaker?
The writers of the show confirmed that whole speech was a reference to Jesse Pinkman.
But Jesse Pinkman is in New Mexico, and they've never been outside of Georgia.
They haven't, but it's a little homage to him, which I think was pretty funny.
I can't really even imagine Jesse Pinkman pre Heisenberg
Hanging out with
pulling a
Daryl?
gun, hanging out with Daryl and pulling a gun on anyone.
No, agreed. It's weak, but I think that's,
Okay.
That's all right.
All right. I mean, I know that we've already
Gone over
the
this
blue
about
meth-
Glenn. I know.
the blue meth thing in season 2. Either way, sure, okay. I don't like the parallels or the attempts to tie homages to.
Oh, I
Breaking
love it.
Bad.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. But the comment that I love that Beth makes here is like, oh, now I see why drinking is sometimes a mistake, because she's clearly coming down. Like she's had like an instant hangover.
Oh, that's not what she said. She feels too good. She's like still riding the wave, and apparently neither of them get hungover because they make such a bad decision at the end of this episode, despite all the feel good feeling stuff that they've established. He's like, we should go inside. She's like, no, let's burn it down. And so then they have a musical moonshine throwing montage followed by burning down the shack and giving it the finger, and then the zombies show up, and then they turn around and walk into the forest in the middle of the night. And I gotta think, terrible decisions just about all around.
Yeah, agreed. Yep.
But the emotional journey that they went on, wow, that makes it all worth it.
Yeah, I guess so.
But this kind of goes back to that article that I was talking about before. They're trying to do some psychological growth here, and I'm like, nope. This show usually does not reward that kind of
Psychological
endeavor.
growth. You're right.
You have to just survive, and that's all you can do. And if you ever go off that script, then you're dead. But in this case, in this episode, they kind of let it ride.
When I first watched this episode, I thought Beth was going to bite it pretty hard.
Oh yeah,
Because
well,
usually when you see them focus in on, and I didn't think they would do this to Daryl just because he's Daryl, and who knows? I mean, eventually they'll probably kill Daryl, but in this case, Beth, we've seen a few things about her, but this was really a Beth-focused episode. And I thought that was what they were going with this, because usually that's what happens when you suddenly get these long speeches and these glimpses, these deeper glimpses into somebody's life.
Or anybody saying that they think, yeah, life should be more than this.
Right. then they're rewarded by being killed in the next episode or something. So.
Yeah, and that's the point behind Timothy Sandifer, author of The Walking Dead: Anarchy, State, and Zombie Dystopia. Civilization and its discontents. So, interesting. A couple of articles, kind of both of them psychologically heavy, but I did not feel. You said that you were less into this one in retrospect, mostly because of Beth's motivations, I guess.
I just felt like that they could have figured out a better way to get there. That's all.
Yeah.
It just, I don't buy that this would have been. I think I would have been more if she had been looking for Maggie or looking for the other people. That makes a lot more sense to me. Even if that's futile, at least there's a little bit of hope there. The drinking thing is super bizarre, especially given her dad's history with it. So I don't know. The other thing that was really that I found interesting, just as an aside, something that Daryl flings out to her as an insult, is that he calls her like a college bitch, or says she's like a college bitch looking for alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And like Beth's still a teenager. She's never been to college. Like it's just kind of this odd little thing.
She didn't even graduate from high school.
Right. She was.
They have more in common than he realizes.
Right. It's just kind of like, all right, that's fine. But yeah, I liked where they went with this. I just wish it had been a little less clunky and awkward, but I guess there was no way for that to not be awkward.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was good development. I guess I never really believed, or by the end of this episode, I still don't really believe that Beth is a survivor.
Nah.
I think that doesn't feel. She doesn't really feel like someone who could make it on her own.
Nope, she does not.
So
I do kind of agree with Daryl on that point, that she's a total liability.
Yeah. So the next couple episodes are Alone and The Grove. And that's 13 and 14. And I guess that's what we're going to talk about next time.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
All right. So, yeah, if anybody has any thoughts about these couple of episodes, Beth's drinking problem, send us a tweet, Reanimated PCast, on the Twitters and on our website, reanimatedpodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. And then you can send us an email as well. And what is that email address again, Stuart?
reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you. I always get it wrong. So, you have to keep me on the straight and narrow.
That's what I'm here for.
So until next time, ciao.
Bye-bye.